You know what? Sometimes these great albums come from the most unexpected places. You've got the debut album here from Friko. Where We've Been, Where We Go From Here is, I'm not even going to waste your time, one of my favourite albums of the year so far. I don't even need a preamble, don't even need a ranty blah 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 blah. Let's just get into it. This is friggin' great. There's no shits and giggles here, guys. This is just a straight up indie rock album that knows exactly what it is from front to back. Gives you a lot to enjoy, a lot to be nostalgic about, a lot of clear and obvious influences, and yet it just pulls everything off extremely well and just makes for such a great listen. It is just going to be one of those albums that kind of explains itself. The opener, Where We've Been, honestly might be the best track on the album. There's definitely a few contenders for me that could definitely reach that level. I'm undecided on my actual favourite track yet, but this is definitely in contention. It's super emotive. The ending is absolutely explosive and chaotic and an absolute mess. The instrumentation just kind of delves into madness, as you can tell that the vocalist is just kind of becoming more and more manic, more and more just all over the place with how he's feeling and how everything just kind of he seems to be toppling over in on top of himself. The vocals remind me a lot of like someone like Conor Oberst initially as well. The sort of Bright Eyes influence definitely comes through on the sort of first leg of the track, but then as the track progresses we do get into a much more chaotic mess. This song, amongst many others on the album, are very reflective, very concerned with where life currently is, where life is going to go, that kind of stuff. You've got Crimson to Chrome as well, which carries on this theme in a slightly different way, where there's just constant references on this track to being too old or feeling too old or things maybe getting past that point. I feel like we all feel that feeling at some point in our lives. But yeah, it's just almost like as if life is stagnated or life is just kind of stalled or something like that. But this track itself, super nostalgic for the 2000s. Pick out any classic indie rock band from that era and this song will probably remind you of that. Chemical is absolutely blistering. You've got Statues as well, which I've wrote down some of the lyrics on this one because there's some beautiful moments with the writing on this track. This again could also be the best track on the album, guys. Like I say, I'm undecided. It could be this one, it could be the opening track, it could be Crimson to Chrome. It's very hard to choose, you know. But anyway, the line where he kind of just casually throws out that I was a loner for so long is pretty hard hitting. I mean, it's a pretty fleeting moment. It's not like the line lingers or he lingers on that line or anything like that. But just hearing that line in such a sort of nonchalant way coming out and it just moving on to something else is just really heartbreaking, honestly. Like just the idea of people having that awful feeling of just being so alone and never really having anybody. But I think the track is a little bit more hopeful in that they found somebody else. And I really like the chorus line, actually, where this is really beautifully written for me. Someday we'll lay statues of our own. For now, we'll bow to the memories of stone. I thought that was pretty impressive. Get Numb to It is another track that continues a lot of the depressing narratives that feature throughout this album, which is presented in the most excitable way, like the juxtaposition of how he's singing and how anthemic the chorus sounds versus what he's actually saying is pretty stark, to be honest with you, where he says it doesn't get better, gets twice as bad, you just got to get numb to it. I think is pretty harsh and hard hitting. There's just this idea that, you know, everyone always tells you things will get better, and it's kind of a generic thing that people want to reassure you with, but ultimately sometimes it doesn't work out that way and things actually just get twice as bad. Despite the fact that this is a really depressing idea, again, the song is super uplifting in how it sounds. It's super excitable and fun. I just like that the album has a lot to offer with the depth of lyrics while also sounding so upbeat, so fiery, so chaotic at times as well, and just so so fun at times with the instrumentation. The choruses are great and sing along as well. You can sing along to as well, sorry. Yeah, it's all so well done. A couple of tracks take things completely in a different direction though. They clearly demonstrate their more chamber pop influences on these ones. For Ella particularly, I think is a very stunning track. And this comes in like the midst of the album where you've just had quite a few songs that are pretty upbeat, pretty, you know, classic indie rock sounding. And it does feel quite unexpected when you do hit this track, but my God, it's stunning. Like the instrumentation sounds absolutely lush and gorgeous. And then you've got Until I'm With You Again, which is an absolutely heartbreaking song. I think if you're susceptible to crying to music, I think this is going to be that one track that hits you hard, because bloody hell, it does hit. I mean, the whole track is kind of built around grief or loss of a friend, and just that hopeful feeling of being reunited with that person one day again. Some of the lines as well, where it's like, I'll light the stove until in case you come home. It's just so powerful and just so hard to hear. It's kind of like some Mount Erie level type stuff, honestly. Like there are just some lines that really do stand out and hit you. It's a really horrifying track in that way, but it's so beautifully done. You can't deny it's so beautifully done, and they handle it so well. And despite the fact that at times there's these like wobbles and breaks in the lead singer's voice, particularly on the tracks that go a bit more manic and upbeat and chaotic, you know, he does sing pretty well and with a lot of emotion, and they do end up pulling off these tracks remarkably well, despite the fact that you wouldn't really expect it based on those first couple of tracks. But you got to hand it to them, man. They can kind of go for both sides of these emotions and these styles and fulfill both of them really well. So yeah, for me, this is a highlight for the year so far. I really have found this one to be super enjoyable, really emotional and really hard hitting at times as well. Just so much depth and so much to the lyrics that I think keeps me wanting to come back and keeps me wanting to kind of linger on some of these ideas a little bit more, kind of I guess ruminate some of these ideas as well in my mind, because there's a lot of emotion coming out of this album, while also being just easily one of the best indie rock albums I think you're going to hear this year too. It's an 8 out of 10 for me, an easy 8. Definitely one of the albums that's going to make my year-end list. Having a great time with it. Really thrown out of nowhere, real curveball that came from nothing, to be honest with you. Hadn't heard a single thing about these guys, and I've got to hand it to Rate Your Music for bringing bands like this to light, because if I didn't go on that website, there would never be these kinds of reviews coming out. So there you go. And even better, it's an album that I absolutely love. So I think there's a lot of potential for people to love this one. I think if you're a big fan of classic indie rock sounding music, maybe even some emo fans out there as well, given the content of the lyrics, there's a lot of potential for people to really love this. If you're nostalgic for that 2000s, maybe even 90s era of rock, indie rock, yeah, this is going to be on your year-end list for sure. I can see this appealing to so many people. So there you go, that's my review. I think it might not be the most original sounding album you're going to hear this year, but it ticks the boxes and hits hard in places as well. I think it just does a lot of things well for me, and that's why it's a great album. So there you go, that's Ryan approved, Not Real Music approved. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have heard this. If you haven't, check it out, then come back to me and then tell me. Have a good day. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me over on there as well. That would be amazing. Subscribe. Have a good day and goodbye.